How can businesses drive innovation and growth while maintaining sustainable and environmentally responsible approaches? Joining me today to discuss this is Michael Price. With over 20 years of experience in the sports, outdoor, and lifestyle industry, Michael has worked all over the world and is passionate about doing more with less, reducing our impact, and promoting sustainability. So, if you're ready to learn from a seasoned leader, let's get started. Michael, thank you ever so much for joining us today. How on earth are you?
I'm very good, thanks, Dan. Pleased to be
Excellent.
with you and looking forward to this chat.
Well, it's a delight to have you here, and thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to introduce you. Well, you're going to introduce yourself with our first question, which is the same question we ask all our guests on this podcast, which is to tell us about yourself in 60 seconds.
Well, I'm passionate about sport, adventure, and the outdoors. And through my career, which is, I think, nearly 30 years now in the sports industry, it's been about, inspiring teams to achieve more, but doing that through innovation and probably over the last 10 years, really looking at sustainability and what we can do, because we all need to play our part with the planet. So my first job, Tyne Tees Television in London, part of ITV as a marketing exec. I then went to Adidas, which was my dream job, business unit manager. Then went to Dunlop Slazenger and I worked on product sourcing and development and spent a lot of time in Asia. Great experience there. Then to Reebok for 10 years, where I was marketing director for 5 of those years and worked on their European business. And then we moved our family to the Netherlands and I worked for ASICS and I was the first director reporting to a Japanese president there. And then I came back to the UK and worked for 6 years at Innovate, where the last 3 of those 6 years I was leading the business, reporting to the owner. And yeah, everything for me has come down to, how do you inspire teams and people to achieve more than they think they're capable of? How do you drive innovation? Because that helps businesses and can help sustainability. And how can we do the best for the planet?
Well, so it sounds like you've been busy.
Yeah, a little.
Just a bit. Well, I mean, I guess it's no surprise that sustainability is a critical aspect of business today. And as you mentioned, you've worked in the industry since the 90s and all over the world. How much change have you seen, and what steps have you taken to promote sustainability in the sports, outdoor, and lifestyle industry?
Yeah, I've seen a massive change, which makes me optimistic about the future, and actually makes me believe we can all make positive change. So when I was at Adidas, sustainability wasn't talked about. Even sort of how you treated workers in factories over in Asia wasn't talked about. I then went to Dunlop Slazenger and spent a lot of time traveling around Asia. And I remember one day we were in a factory and the person that was with me, who was our agent over in Hong Kong, had been to that factory before and they'd put a mezzanine floor in. And actually the workers couldn't stand up. And so fortunately we were part of a good company and we closed down that factory. But you could start to see some of the challenges with what was happening with the industry in Asia. Then moved to Reebok, and Reebok was fantastic. In 1998, it introduced its Human Rights Charter. Right across Europe and the UK, we were a key part of that as well. It was led by our American office, and Reebok led the way with human rights in terms of how it worked with its supply chain, its workers, fair pay, no underage workers, etc. So that made me really proud to work for Reebok. And then we did various other initiatives that pushed things along the way. And that really led to the sports industry. In 1991, there was the Nike sweatshop scandal. And that was a massive scandal. And it also showed how consumers had a big voice and they could change, at that time, the world's biggest sports company. And Nike, I think it took them 5 to 10 years to really recover, but they then led the way, I think, in terms of making sure things were done right with workers across Asia, and led a lot of the best practice. From that, I went to ASICS, and we introduced a sustainability department, both in Europe and then globally. I had a CEO that came in and was very passionate about sustainability. So we started to really push that through the organisation and look at how we could make a difference. But a big learning for me then was, don't make it just a department. Sustainability has to be for everybody. So when I got to Innovate, we were able to really bottom up. The team, we were a small team, and they were all passionate in the Lake District about sustainability. And between us all, we came up with 3 simple pillars. Increase the life of the product, make it more durable, because that has a massive impact. Reduce your impact. So how do you reduce your impact as a business? And then support the local community. And because they were fully involved, sustainability became something that went right the way through the company. And I'm really proud of what we all achieved as a team.
Well, it's clear that you're passionate about this as a topic, which is exactly why you're here. So, I suppose your career is still. I mean, we all work for businesses, or a lot of us work for businesses, and undoubtedly they're going to be commercially focused. So, I guess my next question is how, in your experience, can you see sustainability and commercial drivers working in harmony? How do you balance the need for innovation and growth with the importance of making a sustainable and environmentally responsible approach to business?
Well, I think, going back to your previous question, over 30 years from the 1990s, things have changed massively. And I think people now want to work for, a lot of people want to work for companies that do the right thing. So I think you've got to find that balance between innovation and commercial success, and doing the right thing for both the planet and your local community. And I think it can be done. I used to think about things like, if we could take care of our people, and that's both the people that work there, but also our customers, their people, and our consumers. If we take care of them, if we take care of the planet, then the business ends up taking care of itself. You get out of that. And so innovation. So at Innovate, which was a niche trail running, outdoor and fitness business, we worked with the University of Manchester on innovation with graphene. And graphene is this super material that people will hear about more and more. It's the lightest, strongest material known to man. And we infused it into the rubber. And that made the rubber 50% stronger and 50% more durable. So it meant the product lasted longer. You got great grip for better durability. And that was one of our key drivers, to make the products last longer. So you've got a meaningful innovation, a useful innovation that has, an impact on sustainability. And then for instance, the sports industry, so about 10 years ago, it introduced knitted uppers on shoes. And most people won't know what a knitted upper is. But the great thing about the knitted upper is you get no waste. So it's an innovation that is applied across all products in the sports industry, and it comes in all sort of shapes and sizes on sports shoes, and that reduces waste. So I think innovation and sustainability can really, really go together. And you're doing those two things, you can take care of the business and be profitable.
And I think from a consumer point of view, people are willing now more so than before to pay for that innovation, aren't they? They're more willing to pay for. There's a certain brand out there that have extremely highly priced outdoor clothing products, but people are willing to pay for it because of how good that they're known for looking after the environment, the planet, and as you say, communities.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if you do the right thing, and I started with this, I think I'm wholly optimistic. I'm optimistic that we can make changes that have a significant impact on the planet. And there's brands, like Innovate, or the one that you're talking about, with its repair, with
Mhm.
how it's organized its business from a sort of shareholder point of view, etc. And that really excites me about the future.
Yeah, it is exciting, and yeah, and I know a lot of our audience would be excited about the same thing. Recently, we surveyed over 500 global CEOs and senior executives, and we asked them about their sustainability challenges. We had a result of over 90% of them, are taking some tangible steps, whether it's through accreditations or ESG or working towards net zero. Transforming organizations into sources of positive impact won't be easy, it could be argued. So, as a leader, what do you think organizations should be prioritizing?
I think there's three things, and I think many organisations may need some external help, especially if they're smaller. And my three things are: build a plan, a simple plan. So at Innovate, we had improved durability, reduce our impact, and have a positive impact on society. So have that plan, but then make sure the teams are fully involved and invested in it. It's very easy. And I think, my previous companies, I'd seen some of this where you try and force things top down. It's always good to try and do bottom up and top down together. And
Mm,
it takes a lot of hard work. But if you get people invested in it, they take action. And then action is the critical thing. I'm a great believer in lots of small things have a big impact. And so, we were able to halve the number of samples we use, get rid of swing tickets, and reduce the amount of paper and card we used, and we did a lot of simple things very quickly. And there's a little story I'll tell that actually, when we were doing this, somebody told me about this guy. He's called the Forest Man, and his name's Jadov Pang, and he's from northeast India. And he's from this island called the Majuli Island, which is the largest river island in the world. 150,000 people live there.
mhm,
And it's been devastated by deforestation, climate change, and erosion. And you see
mm,
pictures of it absolutely devastated. Well, over 40 years ago, he started planting a tree, one tree, and he did one tree every day for 40 years. And he's grown a forest that is bigger than the size of Central Park in New York. And so it wasn't some grand thing. He started out, I want to make a change, and I'm going to do something about it. And I'm going to do small things. And over a period of 40 years, that's created a forest where they've got tigers back there, they've got rhinos, elephants, birds, etc. And it's changed that community. So I think
mm.
for all of us business leaders, if we can get to tangible actions and engage our workforce, we can make a huge difference.
That's super inspiring, and it's yeah, as you say, a great story, and it leads me neatly into our next question, because we've kind of touched a bit on this already, but you've worked in B2C organizations for most of your
Yeah.
career, so I suppose it's pinning down like what can businesses do to innovate, but also what influences, if any, or do they, and what can consumers do to accelerate that change, I suppose. What balance is there between businesses innovating from their point of view, but also where does the influence come from the consumer in order for that change to take place?
Yeah, I think it's got to come from both sides. So
Mm,
if you start with the consumer, if the consumer digs into companies more and then chooses where they spend their money, they can have a huge impact. And they can raise concerns, etc. I think there's still probably too much greenwashing. I still see a lot of sustainability reports that I would say are very difficult to say. What are those companies really truly doing, and what difference are they making? So I
mm,
think, consumers can have a big impact. If we think about some of the industries, the UN talks about electronic waste is one of our massive issues. And yet I can't get a charger. Most of the chargers that I have, they sort of die after about a year. And I
mm.
have to use different chargers for different systems. So I think consumers, we can change that by how we buy, what we buy, uh, look into the companies. I really like the idea, since I've been at Innovate, this idea of supporting local companies, knowing where your money goes. It's so the consumer can have a major impact. And for companies, I'd like to see companies be far more transparent and open about the things they're doing. The real things they're not doing. Don't just do a plastic shoe, a plastic recycled shoe, and then be air freighting shoes all the way around the world that has more harm. I want to see all companies being far more transparent in what they're doing, the tangible actions they're doing, and again, probably not over promising, but taking real steps.
So with that innovation, then how does that then connect to increase market share and profits? How do you sort of harness that innovation to drive that business growth and differentiate a brand within a competitive industry?
Yeah, well, if I go back to when I was at ASICS, the core of ASICS. So I joined ASICS in 2007, and the core of the business was running. So we really focused on running, and then we innovated in training plans. We had an Institute of Sports Science in Japan, and we innovated in training plans. And those training plans, I think, and we had the data to show, encourage more people to get out running. We got people who achieved 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons and marathons. And we were a leader in providing that as an innovative service. It got people running, which is a great thing if we can get more people moving. It's very good for the world and the planet. And then, we're selling running shoes, and it goes full circle. You can then look at what you're doing and say, right, how can I have a positive impact on the planet and on the people that work with the organisation, the company, and local communities.
Yeah, I think we're seeing more of that happen on things like social media as well, aren't we? We're seeing much more presence of people wanting to use human powered transport to get places more. It's come up as a question recently on just in our internal comms about what mode of transport do we use to get to our programs and things. So it's like you say, it's people taking that courage to step up that ultimately can to take that courage to voice their thoughts on it, to then have that change and have that influence, and ultimately that can then have that big knock-on effect, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, I was going to talk. I mean, at Innovate, when reducing impacts, we had two sites, one in the Lake District and one on the east side of the country in Crook, and that's where our warehouse was. And our customer service team came up with, right, let's do the cycle to work 2 days a week, and we'll meet as a group of people and we'll do it, and we'll just track what we're doing, how many kilometers, and we just supported them through the the bike to work scheme, etc. So and these things can really bubble up, and they're small things, but if I go back to the Forest Man, small things, in 30 years we'll all be we'll all have created our own virtual forests and made a big difference.
I wanted to ask you I suppose a little bit more of a question more about yourself, which is, what are some of the biggest challenges you've needed to lead through, and then how did you show yourself to be the best version of a leader that you and your team and your organization needed?
Yeah, well, I moved my family to the Netherlands in 2007, Christmas 2007, and then we went through the financial crisis. And I was the only director at the time of a 330 million euro business, reporting to Japanese president, and we hit this crisis. And I'd never been through anything like anybody that big and that substantial. And we saw lots of companies, both in our industry and external to it, really laying off people. And one of the things, Japanese companies take their time, which it was a great learning for me. And they're also very good. We said, it's going to be the last thing we do is lay off people in the teams. We're going to actually look at, let's start planning. What are the different scenarios? And we looked at different scenarios. We looked at the impact on, sales, profit, cash flow, etc. And your finance teams do that. But we also modeled something that said, right, there's a potential that running could grow here. People may cancel things like gym memberships, etc. And the core of our business is running. So let's really focus on running. Let's get all of the teams focused on running. Let's cut out and stop doing some other things. So we stopped some sports. We were in football. We were very small in football, and we pulled out of that. Put all of our resources into the core of the business. We communicated what we were going to do right around the countries. We got everybody feeling, right, you're part of this. We've got to get through this together. And we got this sense of, right, if we all work together, we'll come through it. And that's a lot of communication.
Yeah.
And we managed through it. We lost a few roles, but not too many. And we really came through it in a good way. And I think we came through it, being clearer about the future, about what we needed to do, because it forced focus. It forced us to say no to certain things. It got all of the teams together and say, right, if we're in it together. ASICS, we went on, we grew. I was really proud of that, and very proud of how the Japanese respond to a crisis. I thought very good. And then obviously I was leading the business through COVID.
I was going to say there must have been some parallels with what happened a few years later with COVID.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. And the difference with COVID, so Innovate at that time was around about 80 people, as I said, split across 2 sites. And I was leading the business, and then you do feel the weight of responsibility. You've got people's lives, and everything you're doing, you're thinking about the people, and what your action is going to have an impact on people's lives. So we had about half of the team furloughed. We actually went to the bank. I won't mention the bank. The bank wouldn't put us on the government loan scheme, which I'll never forgive this bank for. So the finance director and I, and because we'd said, right, we're profitable beforehand, we'll be profitable afterwards. We just need to make sure we keep the business afloat during this period. It actually forced us into, we really had to look at cash flow. So I was on calls with sales team, customer service, ringing accounts, trying to get, make sure we're getting the money in. And we had some amazing customers. One, Ellis Brigham, an outdoor customer. They were so good at how they worked with Innovate and with me. And that's that idea of take care of customers, take care of people, and the business comes out. We also had some other customers outside of the UK who just said, this was probably April, May time when COVID had hit. They said, right, come back at Christmas time and we'll see if we can pay you. And you see different mentalities. So, in summary to your question, what did I show my best self? It was about being front and center. Communication was critical. Every Thursday I was writing a note. I was thinking about the priorities we all had to have and the stories I could tell to make this note really interesting. And I did that for just over a year so that everybody in the organization knew what we were trying to do and knew how they could help. And we'd also call out people that had gone above and beyond and done some extraordinary things. And I tried to name as many people in the organization as I went through that because I knew the impact it would have on people. And we galvanized ourselves as a team. And because I'd been through the 2008, I also thought, running an outdoor activities would be okay.
Yeah.
And it proved that they were. And we, as Innovate, we also said we've got to carry on producing and launching innovative products because that's how you move forward. You ensure the company recovers, gets into growth, and you keep all of these jobs for the people that work in the Lake District and over in the east of England.
And I bet it was in a way, somewhat of a relief to kind of call on that experience that you had back during the financial crisis to then navigate your way through COVID and leading through that, and kind of having that, I would imagine, retaining that strong sense of purpose that both that Innovate as a company was doing at the time and still are doing. But I mean, at Impact, our strapline is about liberating human potential, and it's kind of all about bringing purpose, like how bringing the importance of purpose to life. And I'm curious to get your take on the importance of purpose, and how can leaders create environments that inspire people and help them achieve their full potential?
Yeah, again, a very good question. And McKinsey have just recently done a big global survey on the state of companies. And I read it, I think, last week, and a couple of interesting points out of that. Only 25% of the workforce, and I think this was through 7 or 8 countries, believed that leaders were engaged, inspiring, and committed. And so there's a bit of a gap with, and I believe I've still got lots more to learn, but leaders have to be front and center in that inspiring change in organizations. There was also another stat, which was that they looked at a productive worker, a highly productive worker who's got the right mentality and the right training, is 800% more productive than an average worker. So leadership, and coming back to your question, I genuinely believe purpose or vision or mission, keep that simple, get that right, inspire people, and then put in place the right principles of how we work, or the right values of how we work. So if sustainability at Innovate was for everybody, that means we all play our part. Nobody walks into the office with a disposable cup of coffee, because that's not playing the part about sustainability. So from the small things to the big things. So get that purpose right, why we're here, what makes us special and different, why we're all doing this, and then the values and principles. I think it's huge. And then you turn around that McKinsey fact of only 25% of the workforce thinking that leaders are, inspiring, fully engaged, and committed to their organizations.
Well, we often say that leadership, rather than it being a particular type of person, is a special type of person, rather, is more about a special type of action. So thinking of leadership as action. And that means that it can, crucially, it can come from anywhere within the business. And so, like you've mentioned, the not bring in, it would have taken somebody from anywhere within the business to not bring in a disposable coffee cup. And it, those sorts of changes, as we've already alluded to, those little starting points can turn into much, much bigger things. I've reached my last question for today. I'm sorry, I may be sad to say, but we have been asking this question to all of our guests that have been joining us on this podcast, which is, if you were starting your career over, starting from scratch, what's the best piece of advice you would give yourself?
I'd say the positive impact that you can have through business. And I've worked, my early career was through product and marketing, and then I got into leadership of total businesses. And as an example, at Innovate, because I was leading the business, we were able to change things like our sales conferences, and we used to do them at, like many companies, at probably big hotels. And we said, hold on a minute, let's do them in the Lake District, A, because we live in an amazing place, and B, let's make sure that money in the Lake District goes to the Lake District. So we knew where our money was going, and our investment is then going to do greater things. Now, the accommodation wasn't as good as staying in a fancy schmancy hotel, but actually the people that came, and when we explained what we were doing it, they absolutely loved it, because they had a sense of, right, we're doing something with this. Now, when I was at Reebok, we introduced with our HR department charity days, and then the product and marketing teams, we used to go and do them together. So we went to a hostel, not a hostel. We went to, it was a children's hospice, and we redecorated it and did things. So I was really proud of those things. But earlier, even in the Reebok days, the investment we had, if I knew what I knew now, with that investment, you can both grow a business, but you can have such a positive impact on, on your community, on your workforce, etc. It's more than just growing a business.
Well, I think that's really great advice to give to both your starting self and also to anybody who might be starting their own career from now. That just leaves me to say thank you ever so much for joining me, Michael. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today, and thank you for taking time out of your day for joining us. And that just leaves me to say, if you want to find out any more about Impact, or if you would like to connect with either Michael or myself, then there will be links in the description for you to go and click on. So thank you ever so much for listening, watching, wherever you are today, and until the next time, take care.